Where did you get an idea for Amazon.com?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth. And I picked books as the first best product to sell online, which are making a list of like 20 different products that you might be able to sell. And books were great as the first best because books are incredibly unusual in one respect, and that is that there are more items in the book category than there are items in any other category by far. Music is number 2. There are about 200,000 active music CDs at any given time. But in the book space, there are more than 3 million different books worldwide active.
Welcome to the very first vlog of 2020, and I hope you had a quite successful start into this new decade, and we are starting immediately with the top 2 stocks to invest in January 2020. And I have to tell you that maybe you know already by the introduction that which stock we are considering to buy in 2020 in January of this year. Now we have to see that lots and lots of stocks gained crazy this year, okay? And I want to show you something that show you how crazy it actually went by an example of the Apple stock. So if we pull out the Apple stock, you can see that just in this year we gained about 88.73%. I think this is even with today, but however, you see how much we gained throughout the last year, and we have a PE ratio for Apple of 25. And historically speaking, Apple was always a stock, even though as tech sector, the stock was always, always a PE ratio of 12, 13, 14, 15. So for a tech stock, it was quite cheap. And even this stock went up like crazy. And this is actually an introduction, 88.73%. This is unbelievable for Apple. And not only Apple went this drastic up, but also other stocks. And I went into a different strategy towards the beginning of this year, because usually if a year ends with such crazy good returns like the 2019, historically speaking, and this is just based on the history, the next year usually is a good year, which means that we can maybe expect, if we're just taking this factor, another good year at least in 2020. And therefore I have chosen a strategy for the first stock, which is Amazon, because if we are looking into the Q3 of 2019 of Amazon, they made $70 billion. And this was Amazon Web Services up 35%, subscription went up 34%, and others went up 44%. And if you compare the stock performance of Amazon, which was just 23%, versus Apple, which was, as we saw, 88%, or the S&P, which was 32%, or Microsoft, which was 62%, you see that Amazon, of all these big names out there, went up the least, which is something that I believe could be a potential to outperform other stocks on the stock market in 2020 if we following this journey. But this is obviously only one single factor that I believe that Amazon is a buy this year. Other factors obviously are that this is one of the greatest growth stories of the internet. As you saw in the intro, Jeff Bezos saw the huge market growth potential of the internet and started Amazon, and Amazon is just ridiculously growing every year, and they are approximately growing every year about 30%. So you can imagine that if the stock don't grow 30%, then you can see that there's a slowly value building inside the stock. If you considering the current ratios of the stock, we will go into it right now as value. So if you think that, okay, the stock went up 23%, but I feel like the value of the stock is quite reasonable, then you see maybe a secret value of 7% if the company or the numbers of the company grows 30%. But let's jump into the graphic that I nicely prepared for this stock. So revenue in Q3, as we said, was at $70 billion. And this is ridiculous. This is a number with many zeros. But this is a number that other companies not even make in their lifetime, and they are just making it in the 3% in the 3 quarters of a year, which is just crazy. So the stock growth in 2009 only 23%, which is below the market, and which I believe if the rally continues on the market, which can totally happen because the Fed has still cheap money and there's not the big factor that concerns everybody on the market. And also if you're looking into the analysis of other companies like Morgan Stanley or Citibank and all these big guys, there is no beer out there, and they are seeing a 90% chance that the market even will grow as fast, or a little bit not that fast like it did last year, but it will grow next year. So this year, apparently, this is the overall opinion on the market by the experts on the market. So we can see that there's a lot of opportunity out there if you are listening to those guys. Now the value of Amazon is whooping $926 billion, and this is a little bit less compared to, for example, Apple. Apple is around already $1.25 trillion, and therefore there's still room to grow for Amazon. And the PE ratio, and this is what I meant by if you are thinking that Amazon is reasonably priced, because the PE ratio of 83 seems to be high, but compared to other historically numbers that Amazon had, they were on also in the beginning of the year at 125 PE ratio. And you have to also consider that Amazon is one of those companies that mostly reinvest their profits into the company, so they make very less profit considering their value as a company out there. And why I'm thinking, especially in January, it's interesting to buy Amazon, because there was already some news out there that the e-commerce space made another record year with Christmas, and this obviously will hit the Q4 numbers, and the Q3 numbers were actually not so good or less than expected. So if the Amazon stock got a little bit hit over there, we can see that Amazon maybe with a very good Q4 number will just grow into the first quarter with the overall good sentiment of the stock market, which we can consider because also the trade war is gone, so they will negotiate phase 2. I hope this is not a huge new topic that they will open between US and China, but the first, let's say, big chunk is signed now, or will be signed on the 15th of January. So I believe that the overall market sentiment can be quite good going into 2020. Now let's look into the second stock that I found is still a great value growth story. So let's go. So the other one is clearly one of my favorite stocks here, Tesla. Tesla is, since I started this channel in summer 2019, you can go back to my very first videos. You will see that I preached from the very beginning that Tesla is definitely such a growth story. And if you listen to me since the summer, actually, I think beginning of June was the lowest point for Tesla with $178 per share. And I remember, as it was yesterday, I was on vacation, I was lying in the bed, I was just scrolling through the numbers. I said, like, this is ridiculously cheap for the stock. And I remember that I bought a lot of stocks back then, and I was just happy to get such a bargain on the stock. And meanwhile, since then, since the lowest point in 2019 until now, the stock growth more than 125%. So congratulations to you guys if you listened since the summer, since the starting of this channel. If you're not subscribed, then make sure to hit and smash that subscribe button and like this video if you like it so far. Now let's dive into those figures here for Tesla. So the income into Q3 was a profit of $342, and this was one of the most reasons that Tesla gained so much attraction in 2019 and towards end of 2019, because the numbers was just crashing everything out there as expectations, and that therefore the stock just went up the first day after numbers 20%, the second day after numbers 10%. So it was a ridiculously ludicrous mode of the stock towards the end of the year. And also gross profit of cars was 22.8%, which is crazy for such a number. And a very interesting fact though, as of now, with this growth, there is just one other car manufacturer out there that is more worth than Tesla currently, and this is VW. And this is something that I think is really interesting, because Tesla just starting now, and they're already from the value, from the company value, the second biggest car manufacturer of the by the company valuation. So this is quite interesting, though they are making much less cars, much less revenue than other car manufacturers out there. But though you can see that there's much anticipation, and I believe there is also right anticipation in this kind of stock, because they are just so far away with electrification and battery technology, as well as autopilot, as well as software. So there's a lot of advantages and leads that they having compared to other traditional car manufacturers. So don't compare it apple to apple style, because Tesla is much more than just a traditional car manufacturer. If you would compare it from percentage wise, I think that you know, the traditional building, the hardware is a very low percentage compared to how the car of the future will be, with a battery as 40% consider of the car, and the rest is really software that will diversify automakers between automakers, because you know, the cars will drive themselves, they will have an entertainment system inside, the people are actually moving outside the city because they can work during their car ride to their work. Then when they reach work, they will give their car to a robo-taxi fleet. So this is really the future, and that's why I believe Tesla is really a buy here. This is one of my biggest arguments ever. Always if I speak with someone and somebody asks me, hey, why do you think Tesla is such advantageful instead of other traditional car manufacturers? This is a big point. I believe if you buy Tesla, you are buying the future of car and transportation. There's also other videos on my channel where I'm talking about the grand vision of a giga transportation company by Elon Musk, with all the other companies like SpaceX is also going into the transportation in the air, and also the Boring company that is just taking everything underground and building a 3D transportation system. So maybe interesting to put all Elon Musk companies together once in a very, 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 very far future. So the value of Tesla is currently $76 billion. And I remember when I started this channel, I was preaching that you can buy Tesla for a valuation of $36 billion, which was just ridiculous. The PE ratio is quite on the higher side, and we have to watch for the numbers, which is the biggest news for January this month. Obviously, everyone waiting for the delivery numbers. Everybody is waiting how the quarter and the full year will end for Tesla. I think that it can be another profit quarter for Tesla. This would be good for the overall sentiment to keep on the prices up. Just there's another analyst yesterday actually that said that he see the price of Tesla stock should be somewhere at 515, so he raised it up there. So we see more and more also negative people or analysts giving higher price tags on the stock. Also Mark Spiegel, one of the biggest short sellers of Tesla, just announced in his yearly investor letter that he cut his positions from 20% to 10% of his funds investment to short Tesla because he just losing too much money. And I can imagine that in this kind of market out there, the biggest bull run ever, to be short, it's a really bad idea. So beside that, also we need to see how China will develop. The first cars was delivered for Tesla on the, I think it was 30th of December, the first 15 cars, and then the next charge of cars, I think there's hundreds in the parking lot. I don't know if they will be all delivered by once on an event on the 7th of January. Of course, a lot of people that love Tesla maybe will come to the factory, what they did also in Fremont in the US for New Year's Eve. This was a quite successful event for Tesla, and we have to see how this develop. However, just be reminded of two important dates for Tesla. One will be the Q4 number release, which is scheduled as per Nasdaq on the 26th or the 29th of January, and the second very important date is the 25th of January, which is the Chinese New Year's Eve. This means that at least I think for a week or two the factory will be closed, I believe, because this is such an important holidays for the Chinese people, and many people are going to visit their family inside the country, and that's why I believe that Tesla has to produce as much as possible. In this time they're already at 1,000 cars per week, and I believe that they can ramp it up to 2 or maybe even 3,000 cars per week in January. So let's hope the best. As much as possible in Q1 will be important for Tesla, because in general the Q1 months is the slowest months for car sales worldwide. So thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow, because I'm vlogging every single day.